Colonel Daniel Price, Lieutenant Colonel Euken Mills, other senior officers, junior officers, warrant officers first and second class, senior and junior non-commissioned officers, ladies, men, children of this, the Jamaica Defense Force World Connection. Welcome to Interview 1717, the 17th interview in the year 2K17. Before I introduce to you the person sitting in the hot seat, let's have the national anthem of Jamaica, land we all love. Thank you all. At this time, with great pleasure, I introduce to you the interviewee this week, interview 1717. In the chair is none other than Warrant Officer First Class Garfield Rowe. Welcome to the program, sir.
Pleasant good afternoon to all members of the JD4 Connection and its moderating team. Also, a happy Father's Day to all fathers and those mothers who have played a father role. I am JDF 23252, Warrant Officer Class 1, Garfield Fitzgerald Rowe. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be invited by this committee as the interviewee for 1717, and I'm honored and looking forward for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garfield Rowe. Welcome to the program again, sir. Thank you all. Audience, there you have it, the man in the hot seat. At this time, let me remind each and everyone that we're asking you to refrain from sending audios or picture messages during the interview program. Please listen and feel free to participate at the end of the program, where you can have a one-on-one with Mr. Garfield Rowe. Thank you all. So it's 3 segments. Segment 1, civil lives, immediately followed by segment 2, a look at the military career of Warrant Officer First Class Garfield Rowe, We then take a 5-minute break and then conclude with the final segment where selected members will each pose a question to Mr. Rowe and he in turn will answer to the best of his ability. Thank you all. Stand by for segment 1. Thank you all. Segment 1. Brief look at Garfield's civil life. Mr. Rowe, the first question to you in this segment, sir, could you be kind enough in sharing with the listening audience where you were born, where you grew up, your parents' name, and let us know if they are alive and well? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for the question. I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, Jubilee Hospital, where I spent my earlier years um, in Duane Park. From there, my father, who was a member of the Jamaica Defence Force, was sent on a course in England. And so we traveled with him, and I lived in England after he had returned to Jamaica for a while before coming to Jamaica back in 1977. From there, I attended the Almontown Primary, Kingston Secondary, and the Arden High School. My parents, Rodolph Constantine Rowe and Resident Dorothy Rowe, are both my parents. Unfortunately, my father died 2 years ago. My mother is still living in Kingston. Thank Just to say that I spent the rest of my life growing up in a park camp.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Mr. Rowe. On behalf of all members of this connection, the Jamaica Defence Force World Connection, I want to pass on our sincere condolences to you, sir, on the passing of your dad. And we pray that your mom will continue to enjoy good life, good health. We wish her all the best. As for your childhood, now we are learning that you are a subject of Her Majesty and also that you spend some of your formative years inside Up Park Camp as a youngster. As to the Zulu part, I will let the listening audience decide on that. But thank you very much for your answer. Well appreciated. Now, my second question to you, Mr. Rowe, would have been your schooling. I'm almost certain you gave the answer in question number 1, but I'm still gonna ask you to the best of your recollection again, sir, if you could detail your schooling from a youngster up to tertiary level. And please, if you can remember any schooling or any school that you attended whilst being a subject of Her Majesty, please name same also. Thank you, sir.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. I attended I would say a infant school. I can't remember right now. It's been so long ago in Duane Park, where it was at a resident home. She had set up a school at her home. I remember attending that school as a very youngster. Um, I left and my next schooling was in England when my father was sent on a course to England and we actually migrated with him. When he had left England, we remained in school. Um, so I did a couple of years there. We returned in 1977, I believe, where I attended Almontown Primary. Subsequently to that, I went to Kingston Secondary, and then I went to Arden, where I graduated in 1983. After Arden, I joined the Jamaica Defence Force, and whilst in the JDF, I attended a couple of courses. I did a computer course, system program analyst in Fort Gordon, Georgia for 7 months. I did a series of computer courses locally at IBM. I also did a couple of courses at Vector Design for network and repair. Um, I'll complete this in my next segment. Thank you. Yes, I attended Vector Design and I did a series of course at supervisory management, and I concluded with my bachelor's degree in human resource management at the University College of the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe, for answering that question. One can understand that you are a well learned man. You learned around the globe and as well as locally in Jamaica. Thank you, sir. My next question to you is, can you share with the listening audience what your social life is like presently? Thank you.
I am not sure how to answer the question when you say presently after whilst I'm retirement leave or prior to going on retirement leave, but I think presently means no. So I'm going to speak to the question as it is posed to no presently. I'm currently on retirement leave. I'm currently in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm just relaxing. I had said to myself after working with the JDF that I'll take a 6 months break before I get involved in any other activities, just to move around and have some fun. So I was in New York for a couple of about 2 months, 2 to 3 months. Then I came down to Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm looking to return to Kingston, Jamaica shortly. But for now, I'm just, you know, behaving like a tourist and enjoying a little amenities having served so long and just getting the opportunity to more likely rest and spend some time with my kids. Currently, my kids are here with me overseas, and I'm just using that time to spend quality time with them based on the fact that I also involved in JDF work, and I'm just relaxing at this point in time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for answering the question posed to you, sir. Coming up on the monitor will be some pictures. I want you to quickly look at same and tell us, identify the persons in the each picture and tell us the occasion. And if recollecting to your memory, you can tell us the time as in date. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator, and thanks for the reminder of these beautiful pictures. In the first picture, my good friend and colleague Don Jones, Lenroy Jones, who's a member of the JDF, um, went to Arden High School, went to Almontown Primary, joined the JDF together, lived in the same community, and so it was an opportunity to have him at the wedding. So is also Dale Kitson, who went to secondary school with him, joined the JDF together, and all quite good there. Then I have Captain Harris, retired, first member of the Jamaica Bobsledge, my schoolmate from Arden. We ran the last 100-meter race for our house and won, so that was a good remembrance when we all gathered. A good friend of mine, Donovan Johnson, who attended and was also in the cadet, to my right. And beside him is my brother, Charles. We all grew up in camp. He migrated and is now overseas. And a very good friend of mine on the very far right there. That's in the first picture. And I'll break and then Next picture is my beautiful wife, Paula Murphy Rowe, and her beautiful bridesmaid. And also in the third picture, that's us at the table at our wedding reception. And this was in March of last year. So that was the 26th of March last year. The final wedding picture you'd have seen was a wonderful moment in time. I leave that to your imagination. That's the last wedding picture. The picture for that was when I was living in England at the age of 9 with my sister, both sisters. The smaller one, Kathleen Malcolm, referred to as Joy. She was also a member of the JDF, served in the JDF Coast Guard before retiring. And my sister is a nurse in Jamaica. And the final picture is with my 3 sons, who I love so much. They are here with me as well. Thank you, Mr. Mother, for bringing back those memories.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. You had me smiling. I think I was at that special occasion to share those moments with you last year. Thank you for inviting me. And I can remember those 3 sons of yours entertaining the audience. Thank you very much for describing same, and I'm sure the general audience appreciated it. The next question I'd like to ask you, Mr. Rowe, can you share with us your genre of music? What does Warrant Officer First Class Rowe, Garfield Rowe that is, listen to musically? Is genre wide and far, or it's shallow where it just contain a few musical selection? Please share with us. Give us an insight of what your mind love to sit and listen to. Please.
When you touch music, Mr. Moderator, that's the heart and soul of my liberty. I love music. I love listening to all genre of music. My father was in the military band initially before he went switched trade and went over to the JDF workshop. And he loves music, and he always plays Otis Reddis, John Holt, Neil Diamond, Percy Sledge, and coming from that era to the dancehall reggae, to the Michael Jackson, the souls, the Earth, Wind and Fire Reasons, the Dolly Parton. I listen to all genre of music, and so there's so much music that it's very hard to really say which one I love the best. But there's a couple of tunes that I can relate to, and sometimes I tend to use those as my guide. But I love music very well. In fact, it leads me to try to promote and become an entertainer. I will just share with the viewers a clip of something that I did back in the days, if you'll permit me to, Mr. Moderator. This was a show back in 1997, put on because at the time there was a discrepancy with JDF pay. The moral of the unit was low. Then RSM SSB had asked me to put on an entertainment package, and this was the result of that request.
As our music video this week, so stay tuned. Popular entertainers were on much better terms Wednesday with the other half of the security forces. Soldiers, their families and friends were entertained with comedy, fashion and lots of music. The concert for the army at Up Park Camp was well supported by such dancehall heavyweights as Bounty Killer, Junior Reid, Wayne Wanda and Frisco Kid, all of whom contributed their time and talent for free.
How I got the artist to perform was the same idea that
We've been patrolling, we've been watching their backs and allowing them to go about their business. Now it's time for you to turn around and give the soldiers some sort of support. That's right. Now it's through the soldier them, through all the big show them, Sting, Fresh, during the Christmas and the holiday, them did upon the work, you know. So them never get to enjoy themselves. So from we hear about them thing we say, right, we come give them Sting and everything in a one right, you know.
Despite the large pop star presence, the soldiers reserved some of their warmest applause for their own. This week, so stay tuned.
I know you are a man of music, and if my memory serves me well, I can remember that you were musically involved in entertaining or entertainment across the JDF, and people should and can remember you based off that. Thank you very much for the video, so it can rock back a little memory.
The pleasure was all mine, Mr. Moderator. As persons would have known me from back in the days, barbecues, fashion shows, you know, those were part of my mainstream. So I thank you again for raising those wonderful memories.
Nonetheless, thanks to you, Mr. Rowe, for being the front runner in ensuring that soldiers were duly entertained during their off hours from work through your programs where you put in place, whether it's stage show, barbecues, fashion shows, as you named earlier. That was a part of your hallmark, and we thank you very much for that. Secondly, moving to the next question, I want you to share with us, during your childhood days, was there anybody you look up to as your boyhood hero who fashion shaped you into the Garfield role you are today? Who is solely or who are the persons responsible for the Garfield of today? Please share with us.
First of all, thank you so much again for that question. I would like to answer by saying that the Almighty Father would have contributed to who I am today. I look up to him and give him thanks. He has led me through some hard times, and I'm here today because he exists. The other person I give credit to is my father and my role model. My father was a member of the Jamaica Defense Force, gave me the inspiration and the courage also to join the army and become a soldier. There are other prominent persons, at Leaks, Donald Quarry, singer like Michael Jackson, who when I see these guys performing, would shape that I'd one day want to be probably a good dancer, a good runner, and there are other prominent persons. They're too numerous to mention, but the Almighty God and my Father, I'd say, was the two persons who really I give thanks to, and especially my father, who I followed in his footsteps. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe, for sharing that answer with members of this connection. Finally, in this segment, even though we know you have traveled wide and far extensively, but if you were given the opportunity to choose a destination for an all-inclusive, all-expense-paid vacation. Would you be kind enough in sharing with us where you would have chosen to go? And please let us know why you would have made such a choice.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. By the time I'm finished answering this question, some way, somehow, my dreams will come true. But if I was given that opportunity, the location that I would love to have gone and such a would have been Paris. Paris, to be considered a love city, is somewhere that I've always wanted to experience. And so, given that opportunity, I would gladly have chosen to go there. I've often seen events and circumstances surrounding Paris, and I think it's a wonderful place, especially to be with your loved one. And so, that is the location that I would have chosen if given the opportunity to attend. And still looking forward. Quite lovely, Mr. Moderator. If anyone is able to and wish to, yes, that would be my dream place. Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. Beautiful.
Paris it is, sir. And if my memory serves me well, I think Corporal Brissett chose Paris as well last Sunday. So I don't know how the president planned to deal with it, with the tickets that he has, how he's gonna distribute it. I don't know. But let me not go there because that is his thing to deal with. So thank you very much, Mr. Rowe, for sharing these answers with us for segment 1. We move straight into segment 2. They would say the meat of the matter. This is where it all boils down. Let's go into segment 2 and look at the career of Warrant Officer First Class Garfield Rowe. Thank you all. Mr. Rowe, can you please share with us how, on what terms, on whose command, or was it conscript? What force led you to be a member? Who was the driving force, or was it just your gut feeling and you wanted to be a soldier? But how or who inspired you to join the great institution of the Jamaica Defense Force? Please share with us.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. When I was much younger, I admired the fact that my father was a soldier. And as a youngster, I usually see soldiers jumping out of trucks, being deployed when it was necessary. Not so common now as it is today. But back in the days, you rarely see soldiers. And when you saw them, it was an awesome feeling that, boy, one day I want to become a soldier. Hence, I joined the cadet force when I went to Kingston Secondary. And that, with the fact that I want to be so much like my father, inspired me to become a soldier. That was a driving force. My father and the fact that I joined the cadet and was playing that role so early out, it led to who I became today.
Thank you very much for sharing that answer with us, Mr. Rowe. Being inspired by your father and for the fact that you are a member of the cadet. Having said that, you joined. Can you share with the listening audience the year you joined, your intake number, your squad instructor's name, your years of service, and your rank, your present rank? That is, who knows, you might not want to leave. Please share with us.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator, for taking me back through memory lane. I remember the year that I joined was in 1985 of May. My intake was intake 53. The instructors were, I had Captain Oliver, I believe, for the first few weeks. I didn't think he'd spend more than 2 weeks or 3 weeks. He was replaced by Captain Herbie Mackenzie. I had my platoon sergeant base, none other than Sergeant Winston Taylor. All right. My squad corporals were people like Nicky Jagger, Sproul, DQ Spence, just to name a few. Some of the names, well, I tell you, as you're getting older, you can't remember everybody, but those are some of the significant ones that helped to stay my recruiting days. Years of service, 1985 to current. At the end of my service, at the end of this year, would be 32 years within the JDF, and my present rank is Warrant Officer Class 1.
Thank you very much for sharing that information with us, Mr. Rowe. Having grown a part of your childhood days inside Upper Camp, seeing a soldier would be no big deal to you because your father was a soldier and soldiers were around you. But share with the listening audience the picture coming up on the monitor. When you went to this place, tell us, did it transform your life? Give us a brief insight of going there, being there, what it was like, and what it meant to you. Please share.
Forgive me, World Connection. How could I forget my DSM, Sir Norman D? I think before him we had a Gordon. He didn't stay long. I think he resigned. Charlotte was placed by Sir Norman D. But forgive me for forgetting my DSM. Who could have forgotten him? And I had a squad corporal who was also replaced by a man by the name of Pecco. His name ring out as Pecco. I can't remember his name entirely, but I know Pecco was the nickname he was called. He left partway through the intake. And also we had a change of platoon sergeant from Sir Winston Taylor to no other than Sergeant Hogged Reed, who completed my training as a recruit. So those Raza Brown was another name that was famous for my intake. Those instructors were cream of the crop. No disrespect to the instructors and those others who played a role. We had man, that little short man, Sir Spalding. Yes, that very short man, Sir Spalding. And we had Sir Graham, Rennie Graham. Those are some names that, you will never die. Those names live on forever in the depot. Thank you. Yes, thanks for waiting. The depot experience was the worst experience of my entire life. I've never experienced anything like it. And I'm sure if I was to go back through that recruit training with my pencil and my rifle, the experience was just something that I would not, and I repeat, I would not like to relive. Of course, at the end of it all, we benefited from the training. The training was meant to strengthen our character, to mold us, and I think if we're using those formula of today, we would have better turned out soldier. So despite that I wasn't very comfortable with it, still I'm grateful for those instructors and those time in the depot. Those time really taught us to be soldiers. It taught us how to think. It strengthened our character. It strengthened our ability. It gave us that moral standing ground to say that we are soldiers. and the instructors they were very firm, and whilst unlike today where people complain on the headquarters is saying this, those days were accepted as recruit training days, and that is what made us who we are today. I'm going to break again so that I don't keep this link very long, and I'll continue in my next clip. Thank you. In continuing, my experience in the depot was one of mixed feeling. I thought that we couldn't have gotten through and be the strong souls we are today if it wasn't for those instructors, those standards of training. I had a very bad experience whilst I was injured, put in a box, the meat box, to be taken around, recruit to run with the meat box above their head, and they dropped the meat box, and I injured my back and had to be airlifted. I was unconscious. Sir Mancini, ex-001 Bennett, would have this story wrong. He would tell people about coffin. It's not about the coffin. I was never in a coffin. It was the meat box that I was placed into, and I got injured. And somewhat, I did physiotherapy for 5 years, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for most of that earlier years, and it had set me back tremendously. And I'm going to break again so I can go on to the next and wrap up. As I said, Mr. Moderator, it couldn't be briefed. It's so much to talk, but I'm going to finalize in this final segment. So having been injured, it set me back a while, and then decided to, go into the clerical field. And from there, I was able to get out of that rigorousness. But I eventually did my surgery for that injury back in 1985, in 2013, where I moved that disc in my lower spinal cord coming from that injury. And, but it only made me stronger. And I appreciate those instructors back then. And, I'm grateful for all instructors and for the standard of training back then. I would not do it again, but I appreciated it. Thank you. Thank you again, moderator, for taking me back down in memory lane. Brief moment in the depot is it's an understatement, but I'll try to be very brief. In fact, growing up in camp, yes, I was among soldiers, but actually transforming and going to Newcastle was really a scare, especially since then 001 Anglin. He was my recruiting officer as a Lance Corporal. When I was being recruited, he notified the training depot that I was a cadet RSM, and also I have a serving member of the JDF. And once that's the case, you don't want to alert the training depot staff that you're coming from such background. It's not easy for you when you get up there when they know that you have members in the JDF and that you're a former cadet. Cadet was like a worst nightmare when you instruct on the depot you that a cadet is coming up. So, to tell you more what happened, but that's, was an experience. But in order not to keep this link too long, I'm going to break and just give the details in the next session. Hold for me, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. First and foremost, Delta Company 1GR, you're proud you said? Well, not everybody was first posted to 1GR, but everybody served under the banner of the Jamaica Defense. Mr. Rowe, I'm gonna post a listing of happenings right here, right now. And I want you to run through this list and share with the listening audience what happened and what this means to you, the individual who made this history happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for allowing me the opportunity to speak of some of these achievements, which I hold dearly to my heart as we speak. As the listing states, whilst in the cadet, I was first person to be appointed RSM for the 1st Battalion Jamaica Combined Cadet Force, which after leaving took a while for them to appoint someone else, almost 10 to 13 years, I'm told. Usually a person acting, but no other appointed. Having left the cadet and joined the army, history from the cadet and the JDF will show that I'll be the first RSM appointed cadet to come to the JDF and appointed as RSM. From there, I haven't been promoted to RSM 2JR. For various reasons, I was rotated around the force, and from the West Indian Regiment to date, history would have shown that I would have been the first RSM to have served land, air, and sea, and also within the logistics as an RSM. Did my research, and I couldn't see any person doing land, air, and sea, and also within the logistics. So that's also an achievement. Upon retiring, apart from the force Sergeant Major was senior in appointment, I became the force most senior RSM and also the most decorated RSM within the force. I would also have retired after being the first RSM to complete a bachelor's degree while serving. I'm going to break just to continue down the line. Thank you for waiting on this final comment. I also was the first of 2 JDF soldiers to have worked directly with the United Nations during the mission in Haiti, where we worked directly with the UN headquarters staff. So that was an achievement on which I was awarded 2 medals for that general service and the United Nations Mission in Haiti medal. So these are some achievements that I hold dear to my heart. For one of the various reasons why, I served in all 4 units with honor, having worn all the various dicing, and I'm very pleased to have served and serving those units well. I will not go into any great detail as time will not allow to bring out the achievements of those units under my command, as they were numerous. And I thank God for the opportunity to have served and served well, and for the experience that I've been given throughout my tenure in the JDF upon my retirement. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Moderator. And just to say also that from my intake, I'm the only person to be appointed 001 and RSM to date. So that's an achievement that I also thank God for.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. I know the sort of character as soldier that you are. You are a very determined person, and you always strive to achieve. I can remember doing section commander battle course with you, also a platoon sergeant battle course, and those courses, I think we both can say we share a lot, will always be etched in our memories where happenings is concerned with the then training officer and also members of those courses. I am sure you would agree with me.
I just want to allude to the fact that sometimes it's not good to toot your own horn in these aspects. But having gone through trying times within the JDF and having achieved all these, I'm looking forward to writing a book, because I think it's something that I need to speak of, because it wasn't just a road, a narrow, straight road. There was a lot of challenges, a lot of issues. And so to come out with all these that I can now speak of is a tremendous experience for me. And so I'm not using this opportunity as a bragging rights. So for those listening, please forgive if it come across that way. But it's really has been a long journey and trying times, with a lot of patience and a lot of dedication. And so having gone through all of what I did, it wasn't a better road. It wasn't an easy road. And having come out, with what I've looked at in my research, I just thought it was necessary to just speak of this and not to let it appear as a bragging right. So just want to clarify that for the listeners.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. Well, achievements are achievements, and achievement comes with us and will stay with us always. In moving on, I remember the days when you were at, I think it started out at as DPU, then it changed to ISCF. I hope I am getting it right. And you taught classes in computing. I remember I did, because back in those days you didn't have much computers, and then when the JDF came on stream with the computers, only the clerks most of the time, or people who had computers at home, had knowledge of how to use a computer. Hence, I myself thought it was necessary to garner with the changing times computing skills. So I can remember sitting in your class, learning about the monitor, the CPU, the mouse, etc. Do you want to enlighten us as to why you taught these classes? Because as far as I know, your students were from privates to colonels. It doesn't matter the rank. They were sitting in your class trying to learn something about the computer. Please share that era with us. Thank you.
Thank you for that question again, Mr. Moderator. I'm more than delighted to speak of this as one of my pet peeves within the JDF, my experience at the formerly DPU, now ISC. I got into computing because I was in the clerical field based on my injuries. My SAM major at the time thought that I didn't want a chance sending me to do these rigorous patrols. And every time I went on guard, mounting or guard duties, I'd be back on the sick bay and I would go back out again because I always said to myself I'm a soldier. While they were seeing me as a paraplegic, I was telling them I was a soldier. So after a while, I was turned into a cook. I remember Corporal Shaw locking me up because I told him that if I wanted to cook, I would not have joined the army. I would have gone to Pegasus to look work, and him locked me up. Subsequently to say, then RSM Lynch, having released me from jail, indicated that within the JDF, once you get a course to do, you do the course, and then at some point in time, if you're not satisfied, then you try to make amends and see where else you'd want to work in the JDF. So I took his advice and finished the clerical course and cooked for a year. But that's not where I wanted to be. And so when I got the opportunity to go to the clerical field, I did just that. Now, whilst there, and I'm going to break here just to not let the voice note be too long, and I'll pick up in the next segment. As I was saying, whilst in the clerical field, I applied to go to the ISC and was approved. At the time, the engineer regiment was formed, and so Colonel Graham at the time, who had promised I see that I would be posted to them within a year because I was one of his better clerks. Then the engineer regiment was formed, and so he posted me instead to engineer regiment with the intention that ISC and engineer regiment can sort that out. And so there was a little bit of politics there. But I eventually went to the ISC and became an instructor. And I've been gone to Fort Gordon for 7 months, where I came back as an honor student, qualified as a system program analyst. I started to teach the soldiers. Now, as the moderator said earlier, only persons in the clerical field was to have gotten clerical training. But I found persons outside the clerical field, because of the advance in technology, coming to me to spend evenings after working hours to update and train them. And it became a common practice for that to happen. I'm going to break again for the next segment. Thank you for waiting. And so I went straight into private lessons, and I was encouraged to open my own business, and I opened a computer school, and a great deal, a number of soldiers, officers, other ranks, senior ranks, warrant officers came and got their developmental training. I also set up where persons could purchase their computers through the JDF Credit Union, and a lot of soldiers were trained. I've had the opportunity of Colonel Price, Colonel Rickman, Colonel Raj Mason, and a couple other prominent persons coming out at graduations to award certificates. And I've had also senior officers arranging for soldiers on the company fund to come and develop who were not clerks. And so that experience was a wonderful experience, and I'm happy I was able to help turn out. Even Sir Mackenzie, former four-star major, who thought at his age he wouldn't be able to learn about bits and bytes. Unfortunately, when he did the course, he was in fact start printing posters and doing things for himself, and he used that skill set to enhance his military career as a four-star major. And I've had numerous of persons indicating and thanking me for getting them on that information highway. One point that I like to raise, which was dear to me also, and I'll raise it in the next segment. Sir Moderator, not only did I train some senior officers, all the colonels from the headquarters, chief of staff, and senior officers, but also I trained all the High Court judges, to include Chief Justice McCullough now, because they wanted to computerize the judicial system. They arranged for all the High Court judges to come into camp on a weekend to do their training, and I was instrumental in training all the High Court judges. In fact, the first week of training, Justice Orr died the following week. And when the judges came back, they were alluded that is the amount of bits and bytes, jokingly, that affected him. But he was very ill, though. So unfortunately for him. But yes, all the High Court judges was also trained by me. So again, a wonderful experience. And we had moved from DPU, which is Data Processing Unit, to ISC, Information System Center, where I became the warrant officer in charge before requesting a transfer to the infantry, where I became an RSM. Thank you.
Thank you, Warrant Officer First Class Garfield Rowe, for sharing that information with us. And thank you for passing on your knowledge during that era, in that skill area of computing, to others, so that they would have become proficient in handling and using computers. Having said that, the next question to you would surround neat soldiers. You were one that would be classified among this group. generally people fashion others and say, I would like to be like him or her. Was there anyone who you had as your military role model? If so, can you please share with us who that person or persons were and give us the reason why? Thank you. Thank you very much again, Mr. O. Before coming up to the penultimate question of this section or this segment, I'm putting up a few pictures on the monitor. Please go through them briefly with members of this connection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator, for these memories again. The very first picture is my last Remembrance Day parade as RSM 2JR down at Hero Circle. The second photograph is a dinner. I think it was the course that the officers run in Moneague. CJCSE course dinner I attended. The third and fourth picture, Remembrance Meritorious Award, where I was receiving my medal for Meritorious Award at King's House. I think this was 2011. Yes, at King's House, being awarded my Meritorious Award by the Governor General. The other photographs, admin inspection of JLF Coast Guard, arrival of the Chief of Defense Staff, there, annual administrative inspection for the JLF Coast Guard, and that one was 2014. The photograph with Colonel Williams was my last administrative inspection this year. I think it was March of this year. I'm sorry, March of last year. I think it was. Could be incorrect. No, I think that was, I'm sorry. I think that was somewhere about October of last year. Administrative inspection of the JDF hearing, Chief of Staff administrative inspection. And the final photograph was just a day after we had a prayer breakfast at the JDF Coast Guard, Master Chief, all there, and Master Chief Brooks with myself. Thank you for waiting. Having dominated most of the sports at the JDF Coast Guard, it's really when persons start looking on to say, wherever this man go, he adds value, hence the name Add Value, right? As I went across the force, persons were referring to me as Add Value, Mr. Add Value, and rightly so, because I always tell soldiers to add value all the time, not sometimes, not when it suits them, not when they feel like, but all the time you add value. And if you're not adding value, you're either going to be constant or you're taking away from what you need to do. So hence I get the nickname Add Value. But throughout the force, wherever I went, for those period of time, that unit dominated. And I think that impacted on me, based on what I was going through at the time, having doing a degree over the period of time and still working and getting these soldiers to be motivated to work was the highlights of my career. And I believe those are the most satisfying and the most important thing that I can remember, that wherever I went, the unit stood out amongst the other units under my tenure, and that was very pleasing to me and some of my major highlights at the moment. Another major event that I need to speak of is also the fact that since the West Indian Regiment to date, I have been the only RSM to have given an RSM message in a JDF magazine, right, which is the JDF 2JR 30th anniversary and Coast Guard 50th anniversary. I was able to write an RSM message, which has never been done before either by any previous RSM to date. And I would love to see more RSM writing messages at that level, because what we find is just when you have a magazine, it's either the the editor, who is usually the CDS message, probably there's a message from the Prime Minister, a message from the CEO, and a message from the editor, but never normally from whether the four star majors or any of the RSM. So having written two messages, one as RSM 2JR throughout our 30th anniversary magazine, and one as Regulated Master Chief for the Coast Guard for the 50th anniversary. Those are two other major achievements that I can stand proud again to say another history in the making, that I've been the only RSM since the West Indian Regiment to write an RSM message in a magazine for the JDF.
Thank you very much for sharing that message or that bit of information with us, Mr. Rowe. Having said that, penultimately, tell us something about Garfield Fitzgerald Rowe that you think we don't know, but you certainly would like us to know. Please share that with us now. Thank you.
Thanks for giving the opportunity to speak freely on this issue. One dear to my heart. Something that most persons won't know is that I, well, some people know that I very much love the Army base and my dedication. But there are a number of times that I put Army above everything else. When I closed my computer school, it was because I was trying to run them parallel with the JDF. But as soon as I got start climbing the corporate ladder, I recognized that there was going to be a conflict of interest. And so I closed the school, which was my personal business, in order to complete my job as a regimental sergeant major without a conflict of interest. My goodly friend, well, a very good friend of mine who was an RSM, I won't say who he is, said that the Army is an hypocritical place and sometimes you have to play the politics. I argue against that. You know, I'm one of those persons who say add value all the time, not when it suits you, not when you feel like, or sometimes, but all the time. And hence, you should be able to stand your ground. As an RSM, I had issues with some of my warrant officers because I was able to confront them, then go behind the back and make certain statements. And I was able to tell them what I thought to their face in addressing disciplinary matters. And some of them didn't like the fact that I did it that way. You know, they would have preferred if I went behind them back and speak against them or speak down on them. And so I had issues with that. So when one of my fellow RSM say, you know, you have to play the hypocrites, I totally disagreed. You know, I think we should confront our issues and deal with the matter at hand and address certain issues. And because I was so straightforward, another person had difficulty understanding that I meant well and that I wasn't playing politics. I was not one of them who was an eye servant who did things because somebody was looking on. I did it even at night when everybody else gone to their bed. I was very dedicated and I was always trying to be a perfectionist, even though we know that, you can't really be a perfectionist because everyone has faults. But I try as much to do the best that I could whenever I could, right? And I get a lot of flagging for that because people thought I was too upright, I was too standing up. And, persons couldn't understand how it is that I can summon a warrant officer, whether it be class 1 or 2, under my command and address certain issues personally without fear or without being biased. A lot of persons would feel more comfortable, as I have seen, for them to speak against other persons behind their backs. And, they would know. And as long as they didn't know, then you're a good friend. But when I called someone to my office and I said, this is what the situation is, this is what it is, this is what it's going to be, person had an issue. And so persons might not know that, I'm a real disciplinarian. I don't say that I don't have faults and I don't fault at times. And I stand corrected whenever somebody's able to tell me where I'm going wrong. And there are times when I have to second guess and look back at what some of the things that I did and say, oh, I would have done it differently. But one thing is that I would say always, it had value all the time. Not sometimes, not when it suits you, not when you feel like, but all the time. Add value.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garfield Row, 001, Regimental Sergeant Major, in retirement leave, let me put it that way. Not yet, but in the making as we speak, for that bit of information. At this time, finally, I'm gonna ask you, Warrant Officer First Class Garfield Rowe, to add some value to serving members and to former members, especially those on this connection, the Jamaica Defense Force, by giving us some good advice. Please share same with us now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. I'd be more than delighted to offer some valuable advice to current and past members. I would say to the past members that remember your roots, remember where you're coming from. And so, having passed through this noble institution, the Jamaica Defense Force, I'd advise you to keep in touch with those back home. Wherever you are, your level of experience and knowledge, and you have a friend, or for example, the 4-star major is back in the camp, a couple of the RSMs who some of you would have trained. And there are times when through the same connection we hear of things going awry or things that are done but was not the tradition. And if you want to stay here and say, boy, our days were better and those days were, I would advise that you try and touch base with those individuals and pass on the knowledge as you know it. We know that things and times has changed, so a lot of stuff that were done back then is not what is being practiced now. But when somebody is totally off, not because of the change of time, but somebody who'd be doing something that is so off-keyed, but they're in command and perhaps not doing it the correct way, and you have that knowledge, I would advise that you add your value in touching base with them via whatever means necessary to say, not to scold them, but to have them to revisit the way things are being done, and if they want to read back a pamphlet or look back at the standing orders and to correct what they probably perceive to be doing that is so wrong. So that's one of the advice I've give past members. And continue to visit the mess and chit chat with the younger soldiers. Sometimes just hearing what had happened in the past. I learned a lot when I go to Curfew Place and hear those old soldiers talk about World War I or II. For those who would have heard stories and or who would have been there themselves. And I learned that camp was based on Arnold Road, which I didn't know before, and that soldiers used to guard back in the days, coming from there, trucking to camp. They never had a barrack room in camp. So talking to old soldiers had value, and direct people and go back into the camp. Don't bypass the mess, don't bypass the Corporals Club. Whenever you go to visit Jamaica, just pass through and talk to some people, and that will add some value along the way. I'm going to break so I can touch base on those serving members now. So I'll in a moment. For the serving members as we speak, right? I keep saying add value. And when you're adding value, it's not because it suits you or it's sometimes or when you feel it, but it's all the time. I remember as the RSM, well, not the RSM at the time, I was the regulating master chief at the Coast Guard. I was having a function at home and I required some stores to be transported from the Coast Guard to my home. But the only driver that they were able to find was the guard commander on duty. And so the petty officer on duty wanted to pull the guard commander of the guard to transport those items to my home. Now, I needed those items. But in adding my value, I said, no, I cannot pull the guard commander just to suit my needs, because I'm only adding value when it suits me, and that was not the case. So I told the guard commander, the petty officer, no, I will not allow the guard commander to, I'll try and find some way to get those stores, right? Luckily enough, we had a standby crew for the boat, but the boat was not in commission at the time, and the petty officer realized that there was a corporal who was also a driver, who we just had a crew on, but there was no vessel, but just for, as a case of having some persons on board. And he offered to send that driver instead. And having weighed it and realized that there is not necessarily a great risk, I decided to utilize that person instead. So if I was just adding value just to suit me, I would have sent the driver, the guard commander, off the guard, and that was not the case. So adding value must be all the time, not when you feel like, not sometimes or when it suits you, but you add value all the time. And so I encourage these current RSM, 4-star major, the NCOs, officers, that they must add value in the interest of the organization and not in their personal interests. There are going to be times when you add value to your personal interests, such as going back to school, but don't do it where it affects the moral of the soldiers. Do it in a timely manner. And so adding value is a key that everybody needs to utilize in going forward, right? And once they're not doing it to suit them or just for a time, it must always be done. Add value, and that is for ex-soldiers and current members serving. Thank you.
Thank you very much, 001 Garfield Row, for adding some value with some good advice to both serving and past members of the Jamaica Defense Force. Thank you very much, sir. At this time, we now take a 5-minute break, after which we'll conclude with the final segment. Thank you all.
Pleasure is all mine, Mr. Moderator, and I look forward to those Section 3 with question from the other members of the World Connection. Thank you.
Best friend, I come to take your life are the worst thing you could ever see. Never Teflon, no can a man know you are far with from your bond, turn on be your enemy. Gideon. We no want a friend from them, cause them heart it full up of jealousy. I did to what we used to share a flask of rum, now you want kill me for anything. But how me fit just I'm not certain where you are to behind curtain. Enough of them say them are your friend, when you check it out, them is a different person. Them now want see you dribble like burden. Them want you live your life in a burden. Oh, we have to say me are your friend, when we check it out, you is a different person. Because enough of them want see your head back shell out. Same way my little friend that sell out. No know if you see the sergeant and lock them out. Can't come in on me quarters and lock them out. See it clear them now with me, but them can't stop till I see I pitney. Do the road slippery, me get the victory. Teflon fly over bad mind quickly because them evil. Dirty are bad mind people. Watch everything that we do. Sit down and plan up for kill you. Yeah, a good thing say me know, ja. And me woulda be a falling soldier. Yeah, make me tell you bad mind can't get me off of the road. Just to stop spend your money for Obia. How me fit just I'm in a certain where you are to behind curtain. No for them say them are your friend, when you check it out, them is a different person. Them no want see you dribble like burden. Them want you live your life in a burden. Oh, we have to say me and your friend, when we check it out, you is a different person. Them is a different person. Them woulda want me charge for murder, accuse me for things that me never yet heard of. But me nah play for chop off the friendship before the linkage gonna further. Some of them are selling out for a burger. One paint a white tees and I red them a burger. Some of them switch and go switch and one you get stitched. Me have to wonder if the boy them a surgeon. Evil, dirty or bad mind people. Watch everything that we do. Sit down and plan up for kill you. Watch out, and me say a good thing say me no oja. And me would be a falling so oja. Bad mind can't get me off of the road, yeah. So stop spend your money for Obia. How me fit just I'm in a certain where you are to behind curtain. No for them say them are your friend, when you check it out, them is a different person. Them no want see you dribble like burden. Them want you live your life in a burden. No for them say them are your friend, when you check it out, them is a different person. Best friend I come to take your life are the worst thing you could ever see. How can a man when you are far with from your bond turn on be your enemy? Me no want a friend from them, cause them want it full up of jealousy. Remember the two we used to share a flask of rum, so you want kill me for anything. Them are wicked people. Them are wicked people. But I try evil. Watch out. Them are wicked people. Them are wicked people. Them are wicked. All of them are wicked. Smartin'. I'm telling you, but just loving yourself. Know what I mean? Value yourself, think highly of yourself. You know, you're very important. Hashtag, I'm a big deal. VIP, you're my friend and my VIP. VIP. Ask anybody, boy. I'm a big deal. You're my friend and my big deal. Yeah, we're kinda important. For real. Oh yeah, I'm a big deal. And my friends are some big deals. Very, very, very important. For real. This has nothing to do with money or fame or vanity. This one is all about self-worth. So big up your chest and stand proud. And don't matter about nobody, no man no more than no man pon this earth. So whether you walk or you a drive car, I tell if you're white or black like tar, me feel good in yourself, you're a star. Push up on the one and tell all the haters I'm a big deal. You're my friend, I'm a big deal. I'm if you tell you, yeah, we're kinda important. Okay. For real. Oh yeah, I'm a big deal. Believe me, my friends are some big deals. Okay. Very, very, very important. For very. For real. It's like you have the Prime Minister, and then you have way. That are the order in a few week country. Yes, that are the status of the hierarchy. Ask anybody about it. 4.0 at the grade point average. And we never cheat or copy, forget it. You know you have your dreams and nobody can stop it. Just walk out, bust a blank and say I'm a big deal. Very big deal. My friend, I'm a big deal. Okay now. Yeah, we're kinda important. Very. For real. Oh yeah, I'm a big deal. My friends are some big deals. Very big deal. Very, very, very important. Very now. For real. This has nothing to do with money or fame or vanity. This one is all about self-worth. So big up your chest and stand proud. And don't matter about nobody, no man no more than no man pon this earth. So whether you walk or you a drive car, I tell if you're white or black like tar, me feel good in yourself, you're a star. Push up on the one and tell all the haters I'm a big deal. You're my friend, I'm a big deal. Yeah, we're kinda important. For real. Oh yeah, I'm a big deal. And my friends are some big deals. Very, very, very important. For real.
Thank you, sir. So, without further ado, I go straight into the final segment where selected members will each pose a question to you. Stand by. Stand by.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Looking forward for these individual questions, and I'll see if I can answer them as best as I can, to the best of my abilities. Thank you for welcoming me back. Thank you.
Stand by for question number 1.
A pleasant good afternoon to the listening audience. Good afternoon to the moderating team. Good afternoon to the interviewee, 001 Garfield Rowe. I am Scratchy Shaw, and I have a twofold question for you, sir. And the first one goes like this. Who was your first love? And where did you take this beautiful young lady on your first date with her? And my second question to you, sir, is about football in Jamaica. If you were given the mantle to be the president of the JFF, what would you do differently in Jamaica with football right now? Because right now the fans are angry. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Scratchy said that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kenrick Scratchy Shaw. In answering your first question about my first love, my first love was a young lady that lived in a park camp, daughter of a soldier, and unfortunately, she was my first love, fortunately, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to take her anywhere in particular on a first date, as her parents were very strict, and soldiers were strict about their daughters. So my very first love, I was unable to take her out because their parents were very strict, and hence I can't recall us having gone anywhere special. But subsequently to her, I've had other special relationship that I was able to take out, but not for my first love. So that's answering part one of your question. I'm going to take a break and answer your question about the football and if I was the president, what would I have done differently? Um, Football is a skilled event and possesses individual skills to put together a complete team. No one individual can't entirely dominate a game, even though in past years we've seen the likes of Pele, who by himself can start and generate and end with a goal to his name, and Maradona and some of those greater football stars. But totally, football is a team sport and hence, requires each member of the team to play their part for the overall good of the team. So, as a president for the Football Federation, the first thing we have to do is to try and find a coach that can pull a team together so that that team can feel like a unit. Right, that's the first thing to pull players together so that they can feel like a unit. Administratively, that requires, like most sports across the world, financial contribution for the proper equipment, training tools, and the proper environment for training. Um, just possessing sport, pure talent is not the end all. How to utilize that talent amongst your team players is a factor. And as such, any president for a federation needs to be able to compile and generate that esprit de corps amongst management and the team, and putting measures in place for that team to function as a single unit. The president of the Football Federation can't do it alone. The support of the people around, the financial institute, the players themselves, all have to come together to bind to what we'll consider to be a progressive football team. And so, no one president by himself can do it all. It's going to compile a lot of elements coming together to make the team one that can be reckoned with. Having gone to World Cup '98, we've seen numerous try by the former, now deceased president, Horace Borrell. And anybody you put there will have challenges just the same. And so you just constantly have to go back to the drawing board, look at what might have been causes and problems, and so best you can fix that, so that you can now impress the followers, the crowd, the Jamaican people who love this sport so well. But it's not just no one doing it. It has to be. There's a lot of factors in there, and so I couldn't clearly sit here and say if I'm the president of the Football Federation that we're going to have major success. But I could certainly use all the necessary tools available, all the necessary skill sets, and see how best we can put a team together that will be reckoned throughout the world as Jamaican footballers. Thank you for the question. I hope I was able to satisfy an answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connection Scratchy Shaw, for your question, and thank you again, 001 Garfield Row, for that answer. Stand by for question 2.
A pleasant good afternoon to all members of the Jamaica Defense Force World Connection. This is 23094 Tracy Ironbird J. All protocols observed. That's the word. Have you heard? Ironbird. Pleasant good afternoon to the interviewer. A pleasant good afternoon also to you, 001 Garfield Rowe, my brother, my friend, till the end. Section, enough respect in every aspect. Stay circumspect. My question to you, sir, is this. during your extensive military career, there had to be a specific time when you experienced some degree of difficulties. How did you deal with those difficulties? In other words, how did you handle those difficulties? Thank you for your kind response, sir.
Thank you, Sir James Ironbird Tracy, my section. Somebody who, when I was a young soldier, guided me through the process. I thank you for the question. That question is a very important question because I really had some challenges, some great difficulties, and I had to use my sheer knowledge and skill base to overcome those. So I'm welcoming that question, Sir Tracy, because one of the most highlighted time of my military career, most challenging time, the question that you've asked and I'm about to answer. So I'm going to do best I can address it without offend anybody throughout the period of time. So Tracy, in answering your question, my most difficult time of my military career is when I left the ISC to be appointed drill sergeant for 2JR before becoming an RSM. I had a great deal of challenge because I believe that having coming from SSB and an IT department, having spent so much time in the clerical field, and person really didn't know much about my cadet background, that would have aided me and in my determination. I think I was not quite welcomed because there was a person waiting to take over from my great friend Sir Petgrave. Another person waiting who are what you say grassroots infantier. And so coming across from SSB and an IT persons, I got the notion that person said, where this IT man going? What we doing this computer man? What does he know about drill and infantry? And so the warrant officers and senior NSOs at that time, not all of them, but majority of them from the higher echelon, I figured didn't welcome my transfer as drill sergeant to take up the RSM spot. And so I had a lot of challenges and persons unwilling to cooperate and persons who dragged their feet on decision that I made, and as such that affected how I would command and manage the unit. So that was a great challenge for me. And I'll just tell you now how I'll address that challenge in my next segment. Yes, Sir Tracy, thanks again for that question. In order to overcome those great challenges, I held a meeting initially and I spoke with the warrant officers, senior NCOs, that for what it's worth, I am the drill sergeant, and that is what it is for the time being. In fact, my challenge didn't come so great as a drill sergeant. I think it started after I took over from Sir Petgrave when he retired and I became appointed RSM. So when I was appointed RSM, I had a meeting with the warrant officer senior NCOs and I kind of stamped my authority by indicating that I didn't totally volunteer to come. I asked to, having completed the RSM course, to be appointed an RSM, and I was subsequently sent to 2JR, and that was a decision by the headquarters. I didn't come there on my own, and so we need to work together as a team. I know there are persons who had some concerns and so forth, and I found out that when I had meeting with my warrant officers, company sergeant majors, I got the feeling that they wanted to derail me to some aspect. I had meeting with them just for communication, for sharing knowledge, and sometimes I get the impression that they wanted to throw me off key, so to speak. So I had to combat that was to, when I had something to do and I wanted advice, or I'd call the sergeant and say, what do you think about certain things? When I did that, I would also call on my good friend Spew Spaulding, 001 Spaulding and 001 Levine, who had the experience throughout. And I would call him and run it by them and say, what do you think? Even though I spoke to my company sergeant, and I had gotten advice greatly from Sir Levine and Sir Spew. And so when I was on top of my game, I felt that the concerns were no pouring, that I was getting advice from the outside and not from within. But I had some great challenges. But what I did eventually was like good sense prevail, and I managed at a level that I know that I could manage, and I had to deal with a lot of stone walls. And so, whilst it was quite challenging, I was able to stand tall and lead 2 GR forward, and that was really, an achievement that I can now speak of. So I was not derailed, I was not hampered by the naysayers, I was not hampered by those who were uncomfortable. I still stood tall at the rein and led 2 GR towards all the various activities that I indicated earlier that we had strided to and won. And I had persons who were there standing beside me, and with those few persons that were there, I was able to accomplish my task before being posted out to Support and Services Battalion as RSM. Thank you so much for that question, Tracy. Thank you so much. My other challenge, Sir Tracy, I thought I had finished, but I just remembered that my other challenge was going to the JDF Coast Guard. To be an infantry has nothing to do about sea or seamanship. I was thrust into the JDF Coast Guard, and apparently my name preceded me, and so persons thought that I was really coming over there to regiment the JDF Coast Guard, because there are a few issues and concerns about how the Coast Guard was being managed at the time, and so my going there was, in some sense of the word, to kind of transform the JDF Coast Guard and some of the principles and things, because while they were Navy in tradition, they were still a part of the Jamaica Defense Force. And such, they were doing things a lot differently, but there was still one core function that guided the entire JDF. And it was felt at the time that Coast Guard needed an infantry to, at some point in time, guide some of the processes that were outside of the naval that was going awry. So my going there, my name preceded me that I was coming there to regiment the place. And, again, it was a strong defense. I know the former Regulating Master Chief Cold Spring had to have a meeting to say that, well, he knows the man, that was me, and he knows that I'm a no-nonsense person, but I'm somebody you can work with, and the rumors that is dispelled were not true, and, hence I went in and had to go and stand tall. And the first thing I did was rally the base, and as I said before, Coast Guard, based on the numerous duties that they had to do, were always just taking part. They were never competing. They were always just pulling a man off duty at the appointed time and one. They were always them and airing at the bottom of the chain, fighting for last on a number of events. So I did say, no to Coast Guard. We're not fighting at the bottom with airing anymore. We're going up there to compete with the rest of the force. We were just as good as the rest of the force. And we started out by winning the athletics competition. Then followed by the swimming, then the football, and we got in the fastest time in the march, and then Coast Guard was now a force to be reckoned with. But the challenge there, was even greater, because in itself, Coast Guard were segmented based on the patrol boat that persons grew up on. And the command and control, there are numerous issues there that had to come in. Trying to get them the dress and the appointment, the standard, a couple of issues that we had that I had a challenge coming across, because again, I was presented as an infantry coming to take over from a Coast Guard born sailor to run the JDF Coast Guard. So that was another challenge, but I did as best as I could as well to morale the troops and rally the troops and get the job done, despite, again, it was another era that person thought I was out of my depth in coming there, because I knew nothing about board or boat vessels and all them kind of stuff. So again, well, a good question, Tracy, and those are my two major highlights, really. My tenure in 2GR as an RSM, and my tenure as the Regulating Master Chief Coast Guard. But it can be said that the unit didn't suffer, they didn't fall apart, and they were held together, and they also was reckoned to be dealt with at the time of my tenure. Thank you so much again, and those are my final points for that question, Sir Tracy.
Thank you very much, Mr. James Iron Bird Tracy. Only fly in peacetime. In time of disaster, we don't see him. But thank you very much for your intriguing question. And thank you again, Mr. Garfield Rowe, for answering his question. Stand by for question number 3.
I want to say a pleasant good afternoon to the JD4 Connections. Hope all's doing well, family and friends. Great Father's Day to all fathers out there. Moderating team, good afternoon. Also, good afternoon to the man in the chair, Mr. Garfield Rowe, Yagaro, my old Adonite schoolmate from back in the day. Mr. Rowe, got a question for you, sir. It's been a long tenure with the JDF, and I know a lot of people have come in since they've been there, and honestly, a lot of us has not stayed. I myself did a 9.5 year tenure and I left. I would like to honestly know. I mean, tell me, what is it that inspired, that drove that inspiration behind you, your tenure, your dedication, serving as a member of the Jamaica Defence Force?
Thank you so much for that question, my schoolmate, Sir Green. Really appreciate the question. And there's a question that I've oftentimes asked myself too. But in answering your question, I joined the army and decided to serve only for 6 years. I don't know when 6 years turned into 32 years, but that's what it was. It's just my love for the army, for the military position, for everything to do with serving the country and adding value. And I believe that was one of the reasons why I retained so long within the JDF, because I had a lot of reasons to leave. I had a whole lot of reasons to leave, and hence I thought I wanted to prove to myself, that I could stand against all odds and remain true to the core. And so I believe that my tenure, my 32 years, was just adding value relentlessly and not aware that the time was running away. Not sure if I answer your question correctly. I'm going to say another piece in another minute. Yes, sir, Green. As I said before, it's just 6 years I signed up for and end up turning into 32 years. But it's the legacy of persons that was before me that gave me that momentum to continue to serve and to know that there was a need for my being in the military so I can add that value to persons coming in. And I wanted to fulfill a career, and I did just that. I timely noted that my time was coming to a close. I had another 3-4 years left in the army. I was not pushed or anything, but I just thought that having done all of this, what more could there have been? And so, it was time for me to leave. I calculated it, and I thought that 32 years, was sufficient, and that I'd leave in good health and good stead. So thank you so much for that question, Sir Green, and my good schoolmate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowan Mega Green, for your question, and thank you again, Mr. Rowe, for answering. Stand by for question number 4, penultimate question.
A pleasant good afternoon to the moderating team. Special good afternoon to all members of the World Connection online and listening at this time. An extra special good afternoon to the interviewee and the man in the hot chair. And Father's Day greetings to you as well, sir. MCPO1 Rowe, otherwise known as Yaga. I am MCPO2 retired Brooksar, and my question to you this afternoon is, I've seen where it was posted that you wore 4 different hats as 001, serving in different units. If you had a choice to choose one of these units to serve all your entire army career, which one would you choose and why?
Sir Brooks. Good question, Sir Brooks. I had to think about that one, before I really decide to answer it, because, the question is going to bring out a lot. I don't know. It's a tricky question, that question that you've asked, but I'm going to try and answer the question. One Jerry, was my initial unit and my love for that unit because of the esprit de corps within that unit. But as an enlisted soldier at the time, I couldn't speak much to it because I was just a soldier. I've commanded more when I was in SSB because that's where I got most of my ranks in SSB from a leadership perspective, and subsequently 2JR where my rank grew to a warrant officer class 1, which gave me more authority and more privileges. And so 1JR I would not have able to benefit from 1JR speaking because I was there mainly as an enlisted soldier at the lower level. Right? But I've served in SSB, Coast Guard, and 2JR as an RSM and air wing. I can't speak much for airing because the tenure at airing was quite short. In fact, I was getting ready to leave whilst at the Coast Guard, and so once I got to airing, I immediately told you, CEO, that I wouldn't be staying long, and I really didn't. So I don't have much experience in airing to speak about the airing, but it's a wonderful unit, and it's a unit that is quite technical, and I was happy for the experience working there. And I would have no problem going back to the airing to work. I'm going to break this segment so it's not too long, and I'll just address the question in the other segment. Yes, Sir Brooks, as I was saying, the airing is a wonderful place. The experience was great, but I don't have enough to say, whether I would have benefited staying there for the long haul or if I would have worked there if I was given the opportunity again because it was so short-lived. 2JR was a unit that had a lot of challenges, especially esprit de corps amongst my warrant officers and senior NCOs. On the mere fact that a lot of persons thought that, IC man coming up to take command, they weren't prepared for that. They eventually came on board, and persons were drawn in line because they had to. It was not a choice. They had to draw in line. And so, I was able to get the job done despite some pull against the hull. But that was an experience for me. And again, an infantry RSM that was quite interesting and something that I look forward to doing again. Now, Coast Guard. I would serve in Coast Guard again as a regulating Master Chief, and given an opportunity to serve, there's a lot of disparity in terms of the command structure and the division and the different elements and the different groupings. But I believe if I had the opportunity to serve back in the JDF Coast Guard, I would have done that knowing what I know now. And I like the opportunity of working in the JDF Coast Guard. I like the attire, I like the look, I like the core function and the duties. I like the esprit de corps of the JDF Coast Guard. I would have loved it if they didn't, it was all about the sea sometimes and other things didn't matter much because they're the naval arm of the JDF. But I like the command of the Coast Guard. I had challenges too with some of the senior persons there. Again, too, they weren't comfortable that I was changing and implementing rules and regulations there as well. But I like the naval command. And I would go back to, and not because the question came from you, Sir Brooks, but I like the naval command of the JDF Coast Guard. It was an experience for me, and I learned a lot too. I learned a lot, and given the opportunity again, I would serve there as regulating Master Chief. Thank you for your question, Sir Brooks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ricardo Brooks, Tricky Ricky, for your tricky question. And thank you again, Mr. Garfield Rowe, for answering his question. Stand by for the final question in this segment. Question number 5.
Good afternoon to all my brothers and sisters from the JDF World Connection. I am ex-001 Collie Petgrave, former RSM 2JR. Good afternoon to our President, Mr. Panther Derek Morgan, and to our Chief Moderator, Mr. Desmond Hanlon, and his team. Good afternoon to my friend, my former co-worker, the man that filled many, many shoes in the 4 corners of the Jamaica Defense Force. And that man is no other than 001 Garfield Rowe. My question to you, sir, there has been the constant transfer of personnel from critical areas in the JDF to serve in civil society? What negative consequences, if any, has result from this? Thank you, sir.
Most esteemed Sir Collie Petgrave, former regimental sergeant major, and my good friend and mentor, I'm happy to have taken this question from you because it's a very important question. And so I'm just going to jump quickly in answering it as the time is going. Persons of importance within the JDF that is seconded to government to perform roles and functions, I have no issues with. Because where the JDF is concerned, once it's properly organized, you must always have a successor. So succession planning is always something that I will preach and teach in adding value, right? You can't be there and be indispensable. And if you think that you're there and you're the only man for the job, then you have not done your job well, because you must always prepare the next man to take over for whatever reasons. So having members of the JDF in critical areas of the JDF being seconded in government, I would strongly recommend that, because the greater good is to the country and is not really to just the JDF. And the JDF is for the country. And if that man is moved to further work within an organization to better the country, then it's the same benefits. And so I would not have any great issue for a man to leave from the JDF and go seconded into some organization outside so they can add more value than they're adding within the JDF, or equal enough value, then I'm good with that. I really don't see an issue. And in fact, I think a lot of persons with the various skill set and military background should go out into organization to help steer that organization for the greater good of the country. Thank you so much for that question, Sir Petgrave, and I hope my question and my answer to that question would justify the real reason why you asked the question. Thank you again, Sir Petgrave.
Thank you very much, Sir Collie Petgrave, former Regimental Sergeant Major, 2nd Battalion, Jamaica Regiment, for your question. And thank you, Mr. Garfield Rowe, for answering Mr. Petgrave's question. With that, we have concluded the third and final segment of this interview. Stand by for the closing remarks of Warrant Officer Class 1 Garfield Rowe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I found all the questions very reasonable questions to have asked, and I hope that I was just unable to answer them to the best of my ability, and that they would have resonated well with those who asked the questions. I just want to thank all the persons on the World Connection at this time, and those who may pick up later. How honored I am to be invited for this interview to share some of my life story and my military career. I did so with a lot of differences, but I was honored to come here and, give some indication of what my time within the JDF was like. I hope I didn't come across too boastful in stating some of my achievements, because I knew that it just didn't happen overnight. It was a lot of challenges. I had a lot of difficulties. I had a lot of difficult times. I had a lot of issues. And to realize what my achievement is what give me that joy to say that, it wasn't all that bad after all. So much so that I am currently thinking of writing a book, because there's some part of my story that I couldn't tell via this means, and there's some part of my story that is still untold, and I choose not to tell it here. But I think I'd want to put that down in a book. But I thank the moderator and all members of the World Connection. I thank the president, Sir Morgan, for creating this group and for getting everybody on this World Connection. It's a worthwhile um, activities that goes on here, and I like the idea that we're able to share from across the globe, both current and ex-members, able to share thoughts and do these interviews. And I so want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. And I just want to say, God bless, and just reiterate, that I wish all persons who are a member of this connection a happy Father's Day to them. And God bless, and thank you so much for your questions, and thank you for listening to a part of my inner meds. Thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Moderator, for accommodating me, and thank you all. And I just want to thank the JDF on a whole for producing individuals like yourselves. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garfield Rowe, Warrant Officer, First Class, Regimental Sergeant Major, 2GR, SSB, JDF Coast Guard, JDF Air Wing, where you're currently on leave. We thank you for your 32 years of service, and we thank you for taking the time out this Sunday afternoon to sharing your story with all the members of this, the Jamaica Defense Force World Connection. Thank you much. The last unit served, the JDF Air Wing. Stand by for the regimental march of the Jamaica Defense Force Air Wing.